Welcome to the latest edition of the Shukri Writes podcast with your host Shukri Writes. I'm excited because this individual who I have on the podcast now, I've been a fan of for at least almost 17 years, like going back to when I was a young pup growing up in New York. The gentleman's name is Casey Stern. He has his own podcast on Bleav Network, a fellow Bleav Network podcast host himself called Unfiltered. He does a tremendous job delivering the most passionate baseball takes you'll find anywhere. Casey, how are you doing on this evening?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I just want to know, because aren't you a Boston guy now? So you are a New Yorker?
I was born and raised in New York.
Okay.
I live in Boston now.
I mean, you always got all that Bruins. I mean, you're always like deep into it with the bees and all that. So I didn't realize you're a New York guy. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You know, it's funny, Casey. The first person who called me out on it, like in a funny way, was Craig Carton of WFAN when I had him on the podcast. It was like in the spring of last year, and it was funny, and it was like, "You're from New York, you're a Bruin." Like, yeah, I am. My best friends, they give me crap about it all the time because they're all Ranger fans. So
well, I hate the Rangers. I'm an Islander fan. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I will say though, Ray Bourque was like one of my favorite non-Islanders ever. Right. And I've got a Ray Bourque jersey still in my closet, so I'm okay with the bees. I'm fine with that.
I respect it unless they're playing the Islanders in the playoffs.
Right, because we beat you, so it didn't matter. So it's fine.
Don't remind me. But like, I'm excited like to have you on, and for those of you that are watching or listening, you can already tell like there's already a great sense of like just flow and ease, and like we're both baseball fanatics, like crazy about the sport, and what a time to be alive. I mean, it's early December, and the number one topic in the sport right now is Aaron Judge. So we're going to lead off the podcast talking about that because every Yankee fan, including myself, I'm still a diehard Yankee fan, lifelong. I need to know what's the deal with Aaron Judge. The latest report that came out today was that the Yankees had offered him, I Bleav it was like north of $300 million. Or no, not the Yankees, but the Giants
offered him 360.
Yeah, 360.
Yeah.
So like that was the latest offer from a couple of hours ago. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Aaron Judge's free agency, and do you Bleav that the Giants would somehow be able to outbid the Yankees in their attempt to keep their franchise player?
Well, I Bleav, first of all, I think we're going to get this information to come down, here as we do this, probably within the next 24 hours here in the Tuesday, Wednesday area, because, there's a lot of smoke to the deal and the report of the $360 million, which is a lot of money. And it seems like it's got final offer attached to it, which gets you towards the end of it. You go back to the Yankees and see where you're at. The other thing is, John Heyman, which he since deleted and probably then hid in a bathroom at winter meetings. He ended up tweeting that Arson Judge, he spelled it wrong, but he should have left it Arson, had joined the Giants. But I do think there's probably some smoke to that in terms of buzz that he's close, and he probably jumped the gun. So I think the Yankees might have an additional opportunity now to get in at the tail end and try and bump their offer. But I do think, when you allow this to hang out as long as they did, goes to the Dodgers with Freddie Freeman a year ago. You can go back to the Cano situation with the Yankees. And even though they didn't want to give him even $200 million, they got $240 at the time from the Seattle Mariners. The Judge situation different because they want to give the highest dollar. When you tell your player, we don't want you bad enough to make sure that we keep you, we allow you to go out there and date. I don't care who's watching. If you're married, you got a girlfriend, you got a boyfriend, you think you're in the most secure relationship. Let me tell you something, how real quick things change. If you go out there, hey, go on a few dates and then see if our relationship is just as good. There are a lot of people not coming home. So that's exactly free agency. You let that dude go out there and date, and all of a sudden they may not come back. Freddie Freeman stayed out west where he's from, and Judge may do the same in San Francisco.
That's a great analogy because I've always looked at free agency in baseball as the ultimate speed dating event that's glorified. Every fan base of all 30 teams across baseball wants to know, is my team going to make a move? Or if you're a Mariner fan, is my team going to make a move? Oh, yeah, by the way, we just acquired Teoscar Hernandez, formerly of the Blue Jays, at the beginning of the Host Stove season. It was like, whoa, okay. That's a surprising when you take away a 35-plus home run hitter from the Blue Jays and add him to that Mariner lineup, and it's like, okay, now the Mariners are really serious that this is not just a one-year thing where they make the playoffs and they're just happy. No, they're trying to improve the club. Or if you're the Cleveland Guardians and you're going out and you signing Josh Bell to a free agent deal, a 2-year deal, and you're like, oh, okay, the Guardians are trying to make moves. But the Yankees, and you make a great point about how they allowed this to be out there for so long. And it goes back to at the end of the lockout, when the reports were out there in New York, Yankees offer him 7 years, $213 million. Aaron Judge recently made it public that he wasn't happy that this was even out there in the press to begin with. And it harkens me back to 11 years ago, actually, dare I say 12 years ago, after the 2010 season, Derek Jeter. Exactly. And I remember at the time saying to myself, why would you do this to the guy who is clearly the face of your franchise? And now they're doing this to a guy who is not only the face of the Yankees, he's the face of baseball, dare I even say. And what are your thoughts?
I want to say this, and look, I like Brian Cashman. I've always got along with him over the years because I do think he's candid. And even though he's not a perfect general manager, being a GM of the Yankees is like being Phil Jackson. Well, you coached Kobe, you coached Shaq, you coached Michael Jordan. Anybody can do that. And that's not actually true that anybody can do it. But people think that you got Yankee money and Steinbrenner money, anybody can go be the GM. Brian Cashman's actually done a very good job overall over the years. But here's the problem, what happens. When you are the GM of the Yankees, you are under so much pressure to succeed and to nail it every single time that you have to make sure, I think in your own head, from a pride standpoint, I got to make sure the public and the fans and the media know it's not my fault. Yes. That they can't come back and give me crap and say, well, how could you not keep Aaron Judge? How did you not keep Robinson Cano, et cetera? And that's why now I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but that's why I believe Brian Cashman goes out there and Cash says, hey, look, here's the deal, because he wants a Yankee fan to no. We offered him over $200 million, and this before he had the historic season, which still was low, but it wasn't as low-balled as it seems now compared to 360. Even in the open market last year, he may not get 300 before this past season. Probably would have got more than 215. But I think he goes out there and does that, to be honest with you, because I think he's saying, I need them to know, and I think he'll do it again. If I expect that if the Yankees lose Aaron Judge, he goes to the Giants, that the Yankees will give even dollars. Now, he could still leave, but I think the Yankees will match any offer, or they will not be given an opportunity. So in other words, Judge goes to the Giants and says, screw it, I don't want to be a Yankee anyway. Jacob deGrom did that. He didn't go back to the Mets and ask them. They wouldn't have given 5 years. But when deGrom just signed with Texas, he did not go back to New York and say, hey, would you match that offer? Because he wanted to be in Texas. Judge may do that. But Brian Cashman, if that happens, is going to come out and say, we didn't even have a chance to give the final offer, or we matched the highest offer, because he wants you to know there's nothing else that we could have done to keep Aaron Judge, because when no Aaron Judge, there's no team. When Aaron Judge is off this team, you're waiting a year for Shohei Ohtani to be a free agent, and that's basically what you are if you're a Yankee fan for the next 365 days, because you're going to come back around until they offer who knows what, $500 million to Shohei Ohtani. But that is Brian Cashman will come out there, I expect, and again, do the same thing you just discussed, so he knows it's not on me. Everybody can know we did the best we could. That's why I put that out there.
And it's a very poignant point that you bring up, because we've seen this pattern of behavior already with Brian Cashman, and I reflect on this and I say, he's had a history. You talked about it at length already. He's had a history of like going to war, so to speak, with these potential free agents who have been long withstanding Yankees, and I just feel like we're at a pivotal moment in time in regards to the Yankee organization, that you need your cornerstone guy to stick around for the long term, because you take away Aaron Judge from this organization. Two major questions, amongst others, now pop up. Who are you going to replace him with in that lineup? That's number one. And then number two, in terms of just the marketing aspect alone, you don't replace someone like that overnight. That takes years to replace. And the big question that I'm wondering as we record this podcast is, with Aaron Judge, in terms of his value, we saw what he was able to do this entire calendar year, hitting 62 home runs, He put on a show at the All-Star game, and everything that he was able to do in New York. And I emphasize this because for those of you out there outside of New York and not from New York that don't understand, there is no place that is more difficult in the world to play in New York, especially if you're a high-profile athlete. Go ask Derek Jeter, who is the most comparable example of this generation. And if you are the Yankees and if you're a baseball fan, at this moment in time, what are you hoping for would be the best case scenario? Would it be better for baseball if he stayed in New York or if he went elsewhere? Let's say devil's advocate, Giants.
Well, I think it's better if he leaves because, I grew up I grew up a Met fan, but the rest of my family are Yankee fans. So I know you're either a Yankee fan or you hate them. I mean, that's basically the lifestyle of a baseball fan.
Yep.
That's basically the way that it is. They are the Dallas Cowboys, and those two are probably even more Lakers, Celtics, or anybody else in their own category of you're either a Cowboy fan or you can't stand them. You hate them more than anyone and hate their fan base. And I know because I'm a Giant fan. Or that's how you are if you're either a Yankee fan or you hate them. Because of that, the baseball world wants to see him go to the Giants. Baseball world wants to see anarchy. They want to see, like they said in Ghostbusters back in the day, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. They want to see crazy. What the hell are the Yankees going to do? Because who's the face of the Yankees then? You're going to tell me it's the contract of Giancarlo Stanton?
No way.
You're going to tell me it's one of these young kids that just came? They don't have anyone. Aaron Judge was the face. That lineup was decrepit. I mean, Josh Donaldson and all the guys that they're throwing out there, and I love JD, but he's not bringing rain right now, just clouds. So at this point, they don't have anything else. I mean, Garrett Cole and all the money that they're spending on him and all the home runs he gives up. So think about how negative everything becomes for a fan base that didn't want Booney back, a lot of people. And, I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong, and didn't want Brian Cashman back. So I Bleav that for the baseball world, most people are looking for him to leave. And it opens things up. Because if he goes back to the Yankees, but what if he goes to the Giants? Well, do the Yankees then jump in on Carlos Rodon in a ton of years? Do the Yankees then go through trade and try and do something that we're not expecting to be possible? Shohei Ohtani, the Angels say not available, even though he's a free agent in the year. What can the Yankees offer to maybe change that? I don't know. I Bleav that things will all of a sudden, that apple cart, as they say, will be upset. I think the majority of people want to see that, and they root for that and would like Judge to go to the Giants.
Absolutely. And the last 48 hours, it's been wild, and that's probably putting it mildly. I don't think too many people expected, maybe Met fans. You can better speak to this as you being a lifelong Mets fan yourself, Casey. Not many people expected that that Jacob deGrom was going to say, "See you later, Queens. It's been real. I'm out." And in very short order, go out and sign Justin Verlander. In which you can say was one of the most impressive comeback seasons by any pitcher in recent memory. Comeback from Tommy John. He has 28 starts. He wins a World Series and a Cy Young Award on top of that. And you look at the front end of this Mets rotation. And I said this at the beginning of the season with Scherzer and DeGrom. I said, if DeGrom can stay healthy, you have the best duo in terms of a 1-2 punch in the rotation, in my opinion, since Kurt Schilling and Randy Johnson with the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2001. Now, you replace DeGrom when healthy. He's the best pitcher in the sport with Verlander, who's a surefire Hall of Famer at this point. The question I'll pose to you is, why do you think the Mets were so keen and sold on going after Verlander in free agency to replace, or should I say, to fill in the hole as a number 2 pitcher behind Scherzer in the Met rotation?
Well, I think they're hoping that he's the ace ahead of Scherzer is number one. I mean, I think, first of all, he just won a Cy Young. His ERA was south of 2. And, in this latest stage of his career and how healthy Verlander's arm is and how he feels, they're hoping that he can give him enough for 2 years. And the third year is a vested option, which means he has to perform well in enough innings to get it. So the Mets don't have a fear of it because it won't be, oh, geez, we didn't get anything in year 2 and now we got a third year. They know he's got to get 2 years with a certain amount of innings and whatnot to get to that third anyway. But I think when they lost DeGrom, they didn't really have a choice. I mean, Carlos Rodon is younger and certainly would have been somebody, and I think he's still on their radar, who probably nets a 6 or 7 year deal. He's around 30 years old, but he's also got injury history, has had Tommy John, has had shoulder surgery in the past. And then after that, Chris Bassett, who they like, who they have, who's nice, but he's not nearly as good. And Jameson Taillon, the Yankee, not nearly as good. Kodai Senga, who we don't know what the ham fighters, what those stats are and how they portray in the big leagues, but they like him. But really, Verlander was the one guy because Shane Bieber not available through trade, and they don't have anybody else that they can go to. A guy like an Ohtani not available through trade. Verlander was the one guy where they could say, hey, look, we actually could get as much of an output in performance this year from him as DeGrom gives Texas. I mean, look, I'll put this out there to you and anybody. You go based on what these two have done. Who do you think's making more starts this year, Verlander or DeGrom? I think you're taking Verlander.
Absolutely.
At 40 years old. And I think in 2024, in the second year of this deal, if I asked you who's going to do it, DeGrom or Verlander, you'd say Verlander again. That makes it worth it. That knowing that and that you're going to get more starts behind Scherzer or was a 1A, 1B, whatever. DeGrom gave you, look, wins are what they are, but he won 5 games last year. He didn't pitch a lot. There were months at a time he was invisible and couldn't be there. And then down the stretch got really tired. And Verlander, even though he's got age, has not had that story. He's been able to be out there every 5 days, and you have to be somewhat careful, but his numbers have been very good, and he's been efficient. And like Scherzer, he knows his body really well. So, and those guys are kind of, symmetrically together from all their time in Detroit as well. So I think that'll help. But look, I'll go back to something you said at the beginning of the question. There's not a number 1-2 matchup right now in a combo, a dynamic duo that's better than Verlander and Scherzer either. Even though DeGrom at the high level and Scherzer would have been better because DeGrom's the best pitcher in the game, Verlander and Scherzer are still easily 2 of the best 10 pitchers in the sport. There aren't many teams who could say they got 2 of the top 10 pitchers in the game, both in their staff. That's 2.
And it's still a scary, it's a scary matchup when you look at it just from a pure baseball perspective. And that's saying something because in the National League East, and this is part of why I am so excited about 2023. The hot stove season is one because there's still so many unknowns. Obviously, Judge, we don't know where he's going to go, what the next deal for Carlos Rodon is going to look like. But the NL East is already one of the major headlines of what should be a real fascinating 2023. We were just talking about the Mets with Verlander and Scherzer. But dare I say that between the Mets, the Phillies, and the Braves, I think, and I would love to have your thoughts on this, I think you're going to be in an all-out war from day one for the National League East between these 3 teams because the Braves, they have a ton of postseason experience. They're still extremely deep roster. Even when I look at their pitching, and I'm like, man, they are going to be absolutely nasty for quite some time. And then on top of that, the Phillies, who just went on this, you could say, a miraculous run to the World Series, considering where they were in mid-September. And I think that even though they're going to not have Bryce Harper for half the season, I think I still expect them to still contend. And then you have the Mets as well. So what are your thoughts on the NL East and your early outlooks on that division in 2023?
Well, I think to your point of Harper not being there, obviously that downplays the Phillies a bit, but now you bring in Trey Turner, and that's a huge difference maker. So that'll really elevate their lineup. And with the stolen bases and the running game is going to be just exponentially more important this year with the new rules, limited throwovers to first base, the larger bags. Those things are going to net more stolen bases, and Trey Turner fits into all that. So the difference may be in the type of offense the Phillies have, very homer-driven this past year, and Turner's certainly going to hit plenty there too. But I think, without Bryce Harper, they'll have to use a little bit more speed. Trey Turner will be there near at the top of the lineup. And as long as Nola and Wheeler are healthy, we saw, obviously, what they got out of Suarez. Ranger Suarez was terrific for them. They got 3 great starters themselves. Dominguez on the back end, who's coming back. They lost Eflin, so they need to replace him. But I like Philadelphia. I think for the Braves, I think Dansby Swanson will walk, and I think it's going to be a bigger loss than the Braves think. They made a lot of long-term contracts, and some of those were team-friendly, and they let Dansby kind of get out there again and date, and I expect him to leave. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Cubs, who just brought in Bellinger and are still looking at Correa, and they're making moves and certainly trying to, identify themselves as somebody who expects to win in years to come. I expect that the Braves and the Phillies and Mets will all be there. But I think with the 3 teams, health is really the biggest factor. What's the health of Bryce Harper, and how does he bounce back, and when does he bounce back? What does Spencer Strider look like, and can he stay healthy this year? Last year when he got hurt down the stretch was a big loss for Atlanta. He and Max Fried are both just tremendous at the front end of that rotation for Atlanta. And I think for the Mets, the health of Scherzer and Verlander with them, it's a great story. But last year, the story was always waiting for DeGrom. And then don't forget at the end, Scherzer was terrible against the Braves in a big spot, was terrible against the Padres, gave up 7 runs. And the year prior, when Scherzer was a Dodger, he tired down the stretch at 38 years old. Now he's 39 years old, right? So when you're talking about those kind of ages, there's a lot of health concerns, so a lot up there. But I would agree. It's hard to put, especially, look, the Nationals and the Marlins are going to be so far behind. Miami, not as much as DC. Obviously, they've got Alcantara and they've got guys there for Skip Schumacher, their new manager. But there are going to be so many wins for these 3 teams to get against those bottom 2. You're probably looking at 3 teams that can all win over 90 games at least next year. And this may be the only division you could say that in baseball.
And in itself, it's one of those things where it's rare that you can say that you have 3 teams that you can look at and say those are legitimate playoff teams. The AL East being the other division with the Yankees, the Rays, the Blue Jays, and I think beginning next year, I would say the Orioles as well. I think that they are going to be a team that that everybody's going to have their eyes on as a potential wild card team in the American League. And staying in the American League East, here in Boston, there is one particular player who has become a major talking point, and all for the right reasons, and in some cases for the wrong reason. I'm talking about Xander Bogaerts.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're trying to get me fired up talking hockey, and that's right in my wheelhouse, Casey. Come on.
Brad Marchand? Never mind. It drives me nuts. Go ahead.
I mean, he's a terrific player, but no, like
that. Pain in the ass too. But go ahead.
Oh, yeah, of course. We own that as Bruin fans. Yeah. But in terms of Xander Bogaerts, because he's one of the premium shortstops that's on the free agent market right now. I haven't opted out of the final term that he had left on his previous deal. I have this feeling, based on everything that I've read, everything that I have heard and listened to here in this market, that the Red Sox, they just seem to be that they're willing to give a half-hearted effort into retaining Xander Bogaerts, which I Bleav is a massive mistake considering the value that he brings. It's not just only the intangibles in terms of the hitting and the fielding and the slugging, none of that. In terms of the leadership and the value that he provides in the clubhouse. How is it that the Red Sox have gotten to this point where they have reached a pivotal road with Bogaerts, knowing full well that he is the face of the franchise right now, and they are in danger of losing Bogaerts to free agency, knowing full well that Rafael Devers is next in line to get a big contract himself?
Yeah, look, I agree with you. And I saw this winter meetings right now being played out in San Diego. Yeah. I was there in San Diego, maybe it was 2 times ago that they were there. And John Lester was a free agent who the Red Sox had lowballed, who they didn't really intend to keep, certainly not if they understood the value that he had for them. And he had done, coming back from cancer, won World Series, the big games, everything you can imagine. And they let him hang out there. And then he got $150 million from the Cubs and went to Chicago and left. I wouldn't be surprised, if Bogaerts ends up on the Cubs, because I think here Correa or Swanson will. They're going to get one of these shortstops.
Yeah.
Maybe San Diego, right? Could end up in a situation where he ends up there. But I think that for me, to your point, the Red Sox and their ownership, and I saw this, you can go back to Pedro Martinez. With Pedro Martinez, they didn't even offer him a multi-year deal. They basically just let him walk when he left after 2004, and in 2005 ended up signing a 4-year, $64 million deal to join the Mets.
Yeah.
He wanted to go back to Boston. They just basically let him out there. Johnny Damon, they didn't want to give him as many years as the Yankees, who ended up. This is how this ownership, the Red Sox have seemingly for the last couple of decades, and they've won a lot, so I don't know how much you can complain about it, but they have basically said, and it hasn't just been with their GMs, it's the ownership, because you've been Theo, you had Jed, you had Ben Cherington, you had different guys there, but they basically have said, we're not going past this point. Here's where we want to go. And for whatever reason, they didn't want to go any further with Xander Bogaerts. The one thing I will say is that when they signed Trevor Story, this is part of what's in the back of their mind, is that we need to bring back Devers and pay him. Can we pay Bogaerts and Devers and pay a pitching staff because they need pitching desperately?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we bring in Story, we know he can play shortstop. We know we don't have to have him at second base. We know then Bogaerts can leave. Story slides in. It's a lot easier to fill second base than it is to fill a shortstop position. So the Red Sox are at least built in a little bit there. And to your point, have to worry about Devers long term. But I agree with you. I think XB and letting him hang out there is a big mistake. I think they've disrespected him more than the Yankees have even disrespected Aaron Judge, because Aaron Judge got at least an offer of $215 million. And then he had this unbelievable year where he bet on himself. So clearly the Yankees then were going to be bumped up to a way higher price. Xander Bogaerts has been so consistently good and important for the Red Sox. They, to me, have disrespected him way more than I think even the Yankees have disrespected Judge in that process.
Absolutely. And the anger with Red Sox fans, and I think it's very much fair and warranted, is quite palpable right now, because they're looking at this and they're saying this is the guy. If the Red Sox are not careful, they could break the camel's back, the straw that break the camel's back. And a good friend of mine, Jared Carabas, he tweeted this out a few days ago, and I talked about this not long ago. He said this is part of the reason why there's anger towards the ownership, and especially most recently Chaim Bloom. You can't have Big Papi at the end of his career go year to year and go out and sign Pablo Sandoval and Hanley Ramirez. You can't not sign John Lester and then you want to sign David Price to a big contract. And I said,
Porcello, 4 years for $80 million,
excellent,
etc.
Great point. And I told him, like, you're absolutely right. And if I was a Red Sox fan, I'd be angry. And I just wonder, like, where is this philosophy coming from as to we're not going to pay the guys?
Everybody's replaceable. That's their philosophy. Is everybody's replaceable?
That's dangerous.
It is. Well, first of all, it's borderline asinine when you think about the importance of what Lester was to them, right? And you think about look, if you want to say the Mets, here's an example. Jacob deGrom, the Mets letting him go. He left. He got 5 years at 35 years old with pitching like 100 innings over the last couple of years. Nobody else was giving him more than 3 years. So the Mets certainly are not crazy for letting him go. If that was a situation, like let's say Xander Bogaerts was a pitcher and he was injury prone and he missed a lot, that's different. You've got a consistent, valuable, healthy, leadership quality winning player on your field who's delivering when you were the worst team in the division and when you were the best team in baseball, winning 108 games in a regular season, then winning a World Series. To treat him the way they have is, to me, not understanding the importance of people and the role they play.
Absolutely.
And that is a big, big mistake, because that is a winning player in an organization right now that has lost at the highest level. They were worse than the AL East a year ago.
Exactly. And you wonder, going into 2023 and even 2024, where is this franchise heading towards, especially should they lose Alexander Bogaerts? I think that they are at a crossroads right now where I don't think this is solely just a Chaim Bloom issue, although he is a public face of, well, we're going to try to incorporate the Tampa Bay Rays philosophy into a big market team. And I think it's disingenuous, because let's face it, you saw this for years with the Mets under the Wilpons. Big market team, but operated on like if you were in like a
the
Pittsburgh
Milwaukee Mets,
like the Milwaukee,
Mets.
And that's no disrespect.
I used to call them the Milwaukee Mets. Yeah,
like that. That's no disrespect to like Milwaukee, the Brewers whatsoever. But let's just call a spade a spade. And I think that if you are the Red Sox right now, and you have question marks that starts with Bogaerts, but I want to also shift it to Rafael Devers. Because Devers right now, you can make a case, and I wanted to go as far as to say he's the best young third baseman in the game right now. Glove-wise, he's gotten better tremendously. We all know about the power that he brings in the middle of that lineup and the damage that he can go the opposite way with power. So I wonder, like, if they're going to let Bogaerts walk, let's just say if, and the attention shift towards Rafael Devers. He says, "Why should I stay here? I just saw what you did to my best friend in Bogarts. How do you replace both Bogarts and Devers? That's now two massive holes. You can't.
You can't. And by the way, they can't pitch. So even with those two guys, you have to pitch. The Red Sox can't pitch, and that's the thing. Like, you didn't get DeGrom. You didn't get, not that they were in on him. You didn't get Verlander. They were in on Heaney, Nick, and him. They've lost out on bullpen guys. They were even trying to bring in Tommy Kahnle, the guy who just the Yankees brought back in their pen, who I like a lot. But the Red Sox, they're in things and not winning things. They're not giving the top dollar. They're not the top place for anybody to go. Why would I go to Boston, who's in last place, when I can go play for the Yankees or a way better team and at the same or better money? You're going to now have to overpay players and free agents to go to you, which is not what the Red Sox had to do years ago. They match, and I'd go to Boston. I could win, and what a great to play at Fenway and all that.
Exactly.
Not anymore. Not right now. You get the Orioles, but the Orioles are a more attractive spot for the Chris Bassetts and the Taiwan Walkers and the Jamison Tyons and the Ross Striplings and all the guys in that second-tier pitching that they're looking at. And by the way, they lost one of the guys in Evaldi, who's in the group and going to be going somewhere else. The Red Sox right now, and I love Alex Carr. I've known him for years. He's a friend, and I adore the guy. But he got a lot of work to do with a team that cannot pitch, right? Doesn't have enough right now in the middle of the order. If Bogarts is gone, could lose Devers too. And if Aaron Judge goes back to the Yankees, and you got the Jays, who, look, I understand. I'm with you on Teoscar. That was a great move. But the Jays certainly could still hit, and they got plenty of thump, and they're going to spend money and make moves. And Alek Manoah is one of the best pitchers in baseball at the front end. Who you got? At least they got Garrett Cole, and they got Nestor Cortez and Luis Severino and Alek Manoah. And where are the Red Sox at? Nick Pivetta? You can't do that. Nope. So they got a lot of work to do in Boston.
And on last point in terms of the Red Sox, they're toying with the idea of bringing Garrett Whitlock to the rotation. I'm like, that would be a colossal mistake. He's most effective out of the bullpen. So it's like you're playing with fire, and we're only in December, and we're in the winter meetings now. Last question before we wrap up. I think of baseball as this one sport where you think that certain players don't bring value, but they bring a tremendous value to a team. And I look at someone, for example, like a Colton Wong, who just went to Seattle. You think that from the naked eye, like, well, he's not like a guy that pops out at you when you look at his numbers, but you see what he's been able to do when he was in Milwaukee, previously when he was with St. Louis and whatnot. The Seattle Mariners are a team in the American League that I think that they are so intriguing in 2023 because of what they were able to do this past season. They make the big trade for Luis Castillo. You got a front-end ace, that's something that you haven't had since Felix Hernandez left and subsequently retired. So your thoughts on the Seattle Mariners and some of the moves that they've made this offseason so far?
Yeah, look, I first of all, I like Colton Wong. He's a winning player.
Yes.
And he's the guy, I remember interviewing him, and he was in tears the day after he made a famous base running blunder when he was a rookie and got called up in the postseason. He is a genuine dude. I like him a lot. And, for him, his defensive metrics weren't very good last year. I'm not sure really what happened with that, but he's a Gold Glove caliber defender. He's been that before. He's got some pop from the left side and get big hits. I like him. Look, it all starts with J-Rod. I mean, obviously, you got to love the dude. You've got the All-Star game in Seattle this year. There'll be a lot of hubbub surrounding it. And when you bring in Teoscar, you had to deepen the lineup. And look, whatever happened or didn't with Jesse Winker, you had to go and fill that thing out. I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle tries to add another outfielder into the mix. I also think that, when you look at the youth and the dominant nature of the possibilities in that rotation, it's one of the brighter young starting rotations in all of Major League Baseball. But the problem is, in that 17-inning game really bared it out. Now, look, I understand that Jeremy Pena, it's a home run, and they only scored one run in the game, right? So it wasn't like Houston blew them out, and it's only a 3-game series. But trouble scoring runs when J-Rod or Ty France were not up, and who's going to be the guy, and how am I getting consistent at bats? That was a problem all year for this team.
Oh, yeah.
They have to get better and deeper in the lineup. Colton Wong's a good start. The Oscar's a good start. I don't think they're done. I expect them to add another bat in the outfield into that mix also.
And it's going to be fascinating to see how the rest of this hostile season rolls on. Casey Stern, host of the Unfiltered podcast on Bleav Network. Go check it out. Phenomenal work that he does. I personally am a big fan of the podcast
Thank you,
myself,
man.
which is
I
which is
appreciate
why
you.
which
Thank
is
you.
absolutely Casey, which is why I'm like, no, sis, you gotta go check it out. Great work. And Casey, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. And I certainly would love to do this again with you.
Dude, anytime, man. And you got to get me next time we're coming in. We talk hockey.
Oh, you can talk hockey. Listen,
dude, I'm a diehard. Diehard.
Love it.
Oh, yeah.
You got it. You got it. Absolutely. Casey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And we'll definitely obviously continue to keep in touch on Twitter and whatnot. But I look forward to having you back on the podcast in very short order.
God bless, man. Appreciate you. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man.